Airlock doors in science fiction hold a significant importance due to their ability to create tension, suspense, and dramatic moments in storytelling. They often serve as a barrier between characters and the dangerous, unknown environments of space, contributing to the overall atmosphere and danger in the narrative. Additionally, an airlock door is frequently used as a plot device, allowing for pivotal moments such as unexpected breaches or confrontations that drive the story forward. And that is one of the reasons I felt I wanted to give myself a small challenge and build a fairly realistic looking airlock door in a small miniature size. I felt that this would be quite a fun little project, so I gave it a go. As a starting point, I decided to use the lid off a margarine tub. I had a couple in storage, but I decided on this one as I felt it had the aesthetics that I was looking for in this project. As I wanted the airlock door to be upright, I chose a scrap piece of chipboard that I had laying around in the shed as a base to attach the model to. Initially, I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to create a landscape airlock door, such as the entrance to a cargo bay, or an upright airlock door, such as the ones used by crew. I carefully removed the outer edges of the lid using a knife before I started to have a look through my collection of greeblies for the parts to use for this model. Now, if you are unsure about what greeblies are, or what I'm talking about, then I have actually put together another video explaining all about greeblies, which I would recommend that you check out after you've watched this video. I started to pick out interesting pieces that I felt would work with the model and make it more interesting. This included random pieces of plastic, flat strips, sprues, and some thin pipes. Basically any item I felt that would make the model look more realistic and more interesting. As I was looking through my collection of sprues, I found these angled pieces and knew that they had the classic science fiction shape, so I put them aside as well. Once I had gathered a small pile of random pieces to attach to the model, I then started to play around with some ideas. At this stage, I didn't have any specific design ideas in mind. I just wanted to start playing around and seeing what would work. One of the issues I soon discovered was that the plastic lid was very thin and was fairly flimsy. I decided that I wanted to add some extra support at the back of the lid and tried some various methods, including some lollipop sticks, before finally settling on using some foam to create the support that it needed. I simply cut and glued some rough offcuts to the back of the lid, which did the job perfectly, before attaching the lid onto the piece of wood using some thin superglue, or CA glue as it's otherwise known. Whilst the glue was drying, I spent some time removing the excess material from the plastic greeblies using a knife before I filed and sanded off any rough edges. I also roughened up the lid with some sandpaper as well to create a better surface for the plastic pieces to adhere to when I glued them. It was then time to start sticking the pieces of plastic onto the lid to form the airlock door using some thin CA glue. I found a couple of zip ties which I thought resembled a gear rack. I imagined a gear turning which would move the door up and down using this rack, so I stuck them onto the door as well. I wanted to create a solid structure support for the sides of the door, and I decided that these old drawer runners would be ideal. They looked like solid metal beams which could support the pressurized airlock door. On the back they had several protrusions which were originally used to hold them in place in the furniture. I decided to take advantage of this and use these protrusions to hold these pieces in place on the model. I drilled some holes into the chipboard that were the same size and spacing as the protrusions on the drawer runners, so I could simply push the drawer runners into place. The results were a nice and snug fit which held the drawer runners in place firmly without any gluing. I then created panels using some foam pieces which I glued to the model. I also added additional tubes and straws which resembled pipes which could have been used for electrical conduit or plumbing. In order to create the panel lines, I used a craft knife and carefully scored the foam, making sure that I didn't cut all of the way through. I then applied some heat to the foam to get the surface to shrink slightly, exposing the panel lines and details. I must admit using a heat gun would have been preferable, but as I didn't have one I used a lighter, which led to having a bit of an accident with one of the foam pieces where I melted it slightly. However, rather than abandoning the piece, I decided to turn that into a bit of a feature. I felt that it kind of lends itself to a panel that has had some damage through maybe a small accident, a small explosion, and I felt that this would actually work quite well with the model itself. Once I had glued everything in place, it was then time for me to start painting the model. Giving it a base coat with some grey primer spray paint, I covered the model before leaving it all to dry. This is what I call the magical stage in any model build. The primer ties everything together, transforming the random collection of plastic pieces into a cohesive sculpture. So far I feel that the airlock door is turning out rather well. I feel it has quite a lot of interesting details, although I am nowhere near finished. I want to include a lot more details on this before it's finished, and obviously give it a full paint job, including weathering. I've also got a plan to turn it into a diorama, in which it looks like it's embedded into this side of a mountain, as part of an extraterrestrial base. Now if you are interested in seeing that, make sure that you like this video and hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss the second part of this build. In the meantime, don't forget you can also check out my other videos. Check out where I built a Guyver unit from scratch, and also if you're interested in talking about greeblies, watch this video as well.